looks like we're starting. Alright. Would this be the coming attraction sound? That's a good question, actually. I have no idea. So, welcome. Take one of these earbuds out because it drives me crazy hearing this. Oh, no, this earbud doesn't work? Okay, that's weird. Whatever, who cares? Alright, welcome. Can you guys hear me now? Am I on here? Is this live? Yeah, okay. Alright, welcome. I'm just going to take a few seconds to let everyone filter in slowly. If you're watching a post-recording of this, you can skip ahead probably. I'm sure nothing interesting is going to happen right now. Okay, you can hear me. Good. I tried to include the live broadcast chat on the screen right now, so hopefully that works. Music too loud? Try to lower it from last time because I'm going to work something. Excellent. Good. Everything looks good so far. So, obviously I'm going to try delaying a few seconds to wait for everyone to get on, as I usually... Oh, what? 33 people. Okay, that's a lot of people. Hopefully this doesn't suck. So, hope you guys are ready for a not too long stream, but a decently long one. Right now I have my beverage of choice mixed up here. It's called the Godfather. It's a mix of scotch with amaretto, so we should have a good time discussing all this. How am I doing today? Well, not a bad day, actually. I've been hard at work on edits for my book. I have the second draft I expect to be completed by Monday. I'm going to send it to my editor by then, and hopefully we'll have something good there. Otherwise, it's been work as usual. Hard at work on this Friday's video, which I'll discuss later on, I think, in this stream. And, every time you hear welcome to John Oliver. I have been compared physically to John Oliver. I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing, but I mean, maybe it's better than have my voice sound like Alan Alda, apparently. So, there you go. So, I'm sure we'll have a nice nuanced discussion on this stream because today's topic of discussion will be JelloApocalypse and his recent controversies on the localization dubbing landscape. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of conversation. I expect to have to converse with chat. I'll try to respond to as many comments as I can when it's appropriate. Obviously, I'm going to keep babbling until I get my point across. But I will be trying to discuss the topic with chat, to talk about it with you guys, because this is a very complicated topic and there's a lot of information, a lot of misinformation, and not all of it is as clear as one might say. Alright, so welcome everyone. Hello. Oh, sounds like Alan Alda, yeah. I get that a lot. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so let me just turn that music off. I was just playing that just for the background, just for some ambience. But obviously we're going to be doing a lot of discussion and complicated stuff today, so I might as well cover up my Vaporwave wallpaper here. And, oh yeah, nuking their entire career. Yeah, this is it. This is a nuke in progress. This is someone who decided to completely blow up everything about their career in a few minutes and possibly blacklist themselves from the anime community forever by getting everyone angry. They got every single person angry at once. And that is something that is very hard to do in the anime community, to unite everyone under one common thing. Screw this guy in particular. We're going to get into everything with JelloApocalypse, Brandon, and why he's gotten everyone angry. If you came here expecting me to defend Jello, you came to the wrong stream. I am here to burn him, so to speak. So, I have here a few... Let me see what that looks like on stream. That looks a little... let me zoom in a little more here. So, what did JelloApocalypse do? Why are people angry at him? What actual damage did he cause? And what is the next step from here? Well, there's a few things you have to go through. And I think the first thing I should do is actually explain what Lovely Complex is. So, Lovely Complex, also known as Lovecom in some circles, is an anime from about 2007. I'm going to bring up the My Anime list. Page for this right now. Give me a second. Add this to my list of things here, and whoop, here we go. So, Lovely Complex. This anime came out in 2007, but it was never given a stateside dubbed release. It was basically kept alive in the Western anime fandom by sheer love for the original content. January 30th of this year, a dub finally released after 2 years of developed by Discotek and Sound Cadence Inc., I believe. Yeah, when you hear it, yeah, 2007 was a while ago, man. I mean, look, I was talking in my last video about doing a Elfen Lied 20th anniversary video, which I still plan on doing, but still 20 years ago. Can you believe that? I don't want to believe it. I feel ancient. I was doing Elfen Lied AMVs back when I was in middle school and high school. This is ridiculous. Anyway, so I'm going to just read the My Anime List summary of Lovely Complex to make sure I don't miss anything, because I am not the biggest Lovely Complex fan. I am not an expert on this series at all. So to avoid making a mistake and summarizing based on memory, I'm just going to read the description here and blame My Anime List if they screw up. So, love is unusual for Risa Koizumi and Atsushi Otani, who are both striving to find their ideal partner in high school. 172 centimeters tall Koizumi is much taller than the average girl, and Otani is much shorter than the average guy at 156 centimeters. I would like to point out that I am significantly taller than both of those two, but I digress. Basically, it's a height difference romance. Opposites attract, short, sassy guy, tall fashionista. It's a fun, charming conceptual series. I read, I think, either a scanlation or maybe the official release of the manga years ago, but I couldn't remember anything about this series off the top of my head. So a lot of this is going off of secondhand accounts, but the real focus is on JelloApocalypse, not so much is Lovely Complex a good series or not. But I can tell you who did love the series: Discotek and Sound Cadence, because this was a project that people were willing to make despite there being no high demand for this series. This wasn't a series that you had like a huge demand for the dub. It isn't like a seasonal anime where everyone clamors for simul release. This was an older show, had a devoted fan base, and it needed didn't have a big audience in the West. But this crew was very devoted to making it, with one exception, that being JelloApocalypse. So let me look at a few of these. His username's So JelloApocalypse. Who is JelloApocalypse? Well, I mean, I think you would know who that is based on a lot of discussion, but JelloApocalypse. Let's take a look at the, where's his account here? Here we go. Oh, the Wikitubia fandom. I'm not sure that's even safe for work. So Jello, actually, I'm not even sure this is safe for work, so I'm probably not going to run this too long. But Jello, obviously, he's a long-time figure. I think he has 2 million subs on YouTube. Pretty big guy. He is famous for a lot of his, so this is, welcome to fanfiction.net, welcome to Tumblr pages. And so this is basically a series where he runs through a bunch of franchises, games, movies, anime, what have you, and briefly summarizes what they are, hitting some key points and criticizing them along the way. Now, I want you guys to focus on one thing really quickly, because basically his whole stick for a while was he would poke affectionate fun at stories that were well loved and say, so basically this is it, and he would point out all these flaws along the way and make fun of it. But okay, so they're saying it's around 1.6 million. Okay, so not 2 million. I'm a little off, apparently. I gave him too much credit. So it's basically series. He would basically go through different shows and games and tease out details, give you brief summarizations of it all. He's also famous for making the show Epithet Erased, which I have seen a little of. I thought was okay. Wasn't really my thing. I didn't keep watching it, but a lot of people really enjoy it, and that's good for them. Jello. Now, I am going to have to tread carefully with some of what I'm going to say, because I have been talking to a few people who do not want their names revealed in this stream, who do not want me to discuss them directly, because frankly, they're afraid of getting in the rays of everyone hating on Jello, and I tend to attract people who don't like me very much. I know, shocking, I know. People tend to be really not into me for whatever reason. But they told me a couple of things. that I'm going to allude to when necessary, but I'll try not to mention if possible. And I've heard that JelloApocalypse can be a little difficult to work with. He broke NDA with Rooster Teeth when auditioning. I think for Ruby, he spoiled some details about the show. Before, and that was a couple years back. And Jello's no stranger to controversy. Very famously, he released a video encouraging people to vote, I think for the 2018 election in America. Was it 2020 or 2018? I forget which one. It wasn't the presidential one. I think it was the midterms. And this video incurred a lot of reactions from... a lot of political reactions, because he was very outspoken politically. JelloApocalypse, if Brandon is one thing, it is that he is outspoken about the causes he supports. But, and this is very important here, I always get confused with the screens here, my hair's a mess right now. It's very important to remember one thing about politics. It's very easy to get on a soapbox and promote yourself more than the causes that you actually are fighting for. And that's why I think Jello... Oh, 2018? It was 2018. Good. So, this is one thing that he would do a lot. He would be very outspoken about his opinion and never censor himself. Now, in some cases, that's admirable, to speak your mind and say what you want to say. But in many cases, he would not hold back when it was inappropriate or when he was burning professional bridges. And this one, he burned a bridge way too hard. So, let's jump into the post. I have it here archived right here. This is a post from Jello's Patreon. Now, he had an accompanying post on Tumblr and I believe on Twitter as well. Those are all deleted. This is an archive. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this entire post. I'm going to try reading when necessary and summarizing where possible. I've read through all this before about twice, but you know, obviously when you first read through it, I might notice something new that I didn't see the first 2 times. But we're going to talk about it. So, Jello was hired as an ADR writer by Marissa Lenti for the dub of Lovely Complex, which is being done, as we mentioned before, by Discotech and Sound Cadence. This is what he had to say about that. Now, the video initially was about, here's a compilation of all my favorite moments in the English dub of Lovely Complex, scripts written by Marissa Lenti and myself, with both of us directing the actors as well. There is some doubt about him actually directing anyone, but I digress. This post is free because I wanted to talk about our work on the show, but I obviously don't want to paywall it as I don't own it. Well, you're going to see how that worked out soon enough. The full explanation of this show at Dubs Productions below. You may find it interesting to read this before watching the above clips. It's a bit long-winded, a bit long and winding road to get to the compilation above, but it's worth it. Okay, so let me zoom in a little more so you guys can read as well, along with me, or ahead of me if you want. So, hey all, at various points in our in the last 2 years, my best pal Marissa Lenti and I working on dubbing an old anime called Lovely Complex. You might have heard us whispering quietly about some kind of project in the old streams. Well, this was it. He sums up the series. Now, he calls Lovecom the grandmother of the shoujo genre, which is strange considering that they are decades of older shoujo series than this, like Fruits Basket, Sailor Moon, Fushigi Yugi, just to name a few that I could think of off the top of my head. Most of Clamp's stuff, but okay. 2007, the grandmother of anime. Now I feel ancient. Thanks a lot, Brandon. I'm already pissed off. Even though it came out 2 decades ago, Lovecom did not have a dub until Sound Cadence CEO Amber Lee Connors grabbed the rights to dub it from Discotech because it was an old favorite of hers. Discotech did not want to order a dub because dubs are typically very expensive, so Sound Cadence endeavored to make the dub while spending as little money as possible. This production was almost entirely asking people to cash in favors. The leads both played their parts for free, and Marissa was sent to write and direct the adaptation, also for free. 'Twas a labor of love. Calm. It's a terrible pun, but I digress. So, this is the first part right here. You don't talk about how much your coworkers made making something. That's just not something you can actually do. I'm going to share okay, good point. I'm going to share the link to this in the chat right now so you guys can read along. Post it right here and send. Now, you don't talk about how much your coworkers made on this, unless the company discloses this. This is not something that Jello should have ever revealed about the pay that his coworkers got, especially not Marissa, who he put under basically the limelight of the internet with this entire post, as what he's about to say is... We'll get to it. Now, to save money on all the extra voices, most of the voices in this dub were grabbed in the usual way. Usually the companies that dub anime are working on more than one show at a time. If they have an actor in for show A, they have extra time in a session, they may bring the actor in to show B to voice some background extras. Because the actor is already there for another show and they're being paid the same amount of money for the time slot, it makes sense to utilize them in multiple shows. Lovecom was dubbed entirely. Which is one of the reasons this dub took 2 years to come out in a world of simul-dubs and weekly releases. Because of this, you can go episode by episode and look up the additional voices credit to tell when it was recorded by comparing what other shows that those actors were in at sound cadence, kind of like looking at the rings of a tree trunk. The other reason this dub took so long is that the production was cursed. Okay. This is terrible. Because basically you're saying that all the actors are kind of dragged in as spares, essentially. Again, you're revealing too much about the production that they themselves should be revealing themselves. If a voice actor came forward and said, hey, I was on this show, I was dragged in at the last second, blah, 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 okay, that's one thing. But you're saying it for them. And that's a little problematic for many reasons. But I'm not at liberty to go into all the details. Oh, why stop now? You've already given us so much. But suffice to say that anything that could go wrong at some point did. Marissa's spine snapped just before they finished directing, and I had to take over directing the leads for the last third of the series because I was the only other person who would do it for free. Nobuku's actor was literally deported at one point mid-production. We often joked about a meteor hitting the distribution warehouse once the Blu-rays were printed, because the universe clearly did not want this dub to be made. Well, that's something you can say, I guess, but this is all, again, breaking NDA. You are not supposed to share these sorts of stories unless you have expressed permission to do so, for many legal reasons. Especially if you're talking about doing it for no money. This transparency may come across, may be fun if you're a YouTuber and your only responsibilities are to yourself and your own personal crew. But when you're talking about a production with multiple other companies, with multiple other interests involved, that is serious. I've had to sign NDAs for jobs I've worked on. I haven't disclosed half of what, certain things that I've worked on in the past because NDA. It's just standard industry practice if you are in any field of entertainment. They make you sign an NDA. Not because you have to hide any secrets, but just because they don't want the inner mechanisms of their company to be revealed. That's just how it is. So, my involvement started when Marissa told me she was annoyed about having to localize the scripts for this show because she had just watched through the show and didn't really like the characters. Now, here's the first of the many things that got viral online. I thought this would be a good opportunity to get some experience writing localization scripts in case I ever wanted to write a dub. Maybe Bomberman Jetters or something, I don't know. So I volunteered to help out. The two of us spent many, many hours across many, many days slogging through Lovecom episodes. And while Marissa thought she sort of hated Lovecom's original writing, I came to the conclusion that I definitely hated Lovely Complex. Now, here's the first thing I'm going to say. I spoke to at least one person involved with the production of Lovely Complex's dub before starting here, and I was informed that Marissa expressed extreme enthusiasm throughout the 2 years making this project. There's no reason she would stick to this project for 2 years as the main director and writer unless she was extremely enthusiastic about the project. Do I believe she was probably worn out some days and irritated? Yeah. Do I believe she was probably making fun of the show at some points? Yeah. Anyone who's worked on a production will make jabs at the show's expense. But do I think that she hated it like Jello is implying? Personally, I do not. believe this was the case. But I do believe Jello genuinely hated it, and maybe through his own colored lenses interpreted grumblings as loathing the series secretly. But, so again, let's recap for a second. Jello is volunteering for free to work on this project, apparently, supposedly. And he hates the series. So this is where we get to the more controversial parts. And I'm going to supplement it by saying I'm not going to share my total reaction to what Jello did during the localization process until the end, because there's some contextual details that are very important that will color your interpretation of everything he's about to say. It is quite unprofessional to openly shit-talk a property you've worked on in this industry. Lenti cannot express any opinions as they have an official relationship with Sound Cadence Studios, Discotheque, and Toy Animation. I, however, was freelancing, and do not have any of those things. I am not speaking for Lenti anywhere in this post. Who can say what Lenti thinks? I'm sure I don't know, except when you said that she sort of hated Lovecom's original writing. You did speak for her there, and potentially damaged your friend's relationship with these companies. But what do I know? I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what Lenti's thinking. But you sure seem to indicate you do. And you sure seem to have no problem frivolously putting your friend in a really dangerous place as a professional. But what do I know? So, I would tell you what I think. And I think Lovecom is a bad show about Risa Koizumi, an actual psychopath and all-over useless freak. Risa is an inconsistently written, awful character who does nothing but miscommunicate and cause problems. She's actively abusive towards Otani the entire series. Every time she does something wrong, the narrative gaslights you by having the entire cast act like it's Otani's fault. She will then yell at him until he gives her a gift to make it up to her. I hate her terribly. This is a Risa Koizumi call-out post. I can go on for hours about the stupid things Risa says and does, but I think the best example is probably the following. After 2.5 years of poorly wooing Otani, they finally start dating. Almost immediately after, her coworker, a 14-year-old boy, tries to kiss her on the mouth while she's asleep. That's assault! Otani sees this and assumes she's cheating on him, but the misunderstanding is quickly explained, and all is well. So then, of course, Risa decides to go on a date with her assaulter out of pity, and then not tell her boyfriend about it. And then he discovers her doing this. So he breaks up with her, obviously. Okay, let's stop right there. Focus. So already, he's okay. This is. I want you to point out that. Okay, where do I even begin with this whole thing? There's a lot to unpack here. Let's start with the obvious. Jello is treating this like it's one of his So this is basically YouTube videos where he goes in about he criticizes the story, says, basically this is the story. It's about these two characters, but don't tell you. Whatever. That's my Jello impersonation. I'm not good at impersonations. All of these are typical tropes of shoujo anime. They're just tropes. The misunderstanding, the weird love triangle that sort of has some problematic elements to it. All of these are conventions to the genre. It's very important to note this whole thing is fictional. It's not real. There isn't really a person here. It's all fictional characters. They're allowed to do dumb things because they're fictional. They're not real, okay? That's the gist of it. Obviously, and of course, I'm getting a few comments here saying that someone who just finished Lovecom, this guy's fundamentally misunderstanding of the characters is making my goddamn head hurt. Yes. Okay. So again, I'm not a huge Lovecom fan, so I can't speak to the validity of these criticisms. But it sounds like Jello is lying, or at the very least misinterpreting what the characters are doing, or over-exaggerating the negative features to extreme levels. And yeah, of course he is. That's what he does. Now, again, whether or not Jello understands a basic shoujo anime it's not my call. You know what? If he misunderstands it, whatever. So far, his job is to do one thing: to adapt scripts, to help his friend adapt scripts so that the dub actors can read the scripts. Now, I want to point out something really quick. I mentioned this more in my video about the localization process. Many people have the misunderstanding that localization is just they take the anime script, they give it to the translator, and it goes to the dub actors. But that's not really the case. The translator has to translate the script. Now, As the translator is translating the script, they are in constant contact with the contact for the anime's rights holders. You may think this is the original creator, but it's actually whoever owns the rights in Japan. So there might be someone else, like a studio, what have you, who owns the intellectual rights to the anime in question, or the manga in question, depending. Now, the translator has to go back and forth. All changes the translator makes has to be signed off by the rights holders. The translation is then complete. In a subtitled version or a manga translation, that's the end of it. But with anime dubbing, there is a second writer that follows the first writer, the ADR writer. Now, the ADR writer's job is to take the translated script and adapt it so that the dub actors can more naturally say the words. Now, this can mean a few things. One, with animation, there's mouth flaps. They have to make sure the words match the mouth flaps. So syllables have to be a certain pace, what have you. Also, some ADR writers will change jokes to some degree. This is more controversial, but some jokes just don't translate well in English, A Japanese pun, for example, won't make any sense in English. If you literally translate that, it's going to be the weirdest, most surreal experience of your life, because it just doesn't make any sense in the language. So there has to be some adaptation there as needed. So from there, any change that they make, that the ADR writer makes, has to go back to translations. And then it has to go back to the rights holders to approve. Everything gets signed off. It's like any production pipeline in any creative field. Everyone has to sign off on it. There are very rare occasions where sign-off is given to great big changes. Ghost Stories is one of them. But they had a contract that was very unique. Samurai Pizza Cats is another one too. The 4Kids dubs, they had unique contracts as well, but those contracts are not typically signed anymore. Because anime studios understand that the dubbers have in the past may taken liberties, like with 4Kids. And so they have more strict rules to make sure the original intent is enforced as needed. If a dub ever deviates from the original Japanese script, it's because the original rights holders in Japan either signed off on it, and as in they approve of the change, or they just do not care enough to enforce the original intent. It's one of those two. Let's just now keep it in mind as we discuss what Jello chose to do. So, show's myriad of other issues, so he just criticized the show for a bit. I was baffled by this after we finished the series. So, of course, I did a thing that I always do when I'm baffled by something terrible. I go looking for an explanation. I skimmed through other adaptations of the show, watched the live-action movie. He praised the live-action movie, so that's pretty cool. Turns out there are quite a few storylines that didn't make it into the anime. So what's the deal? Turns out the arcs sucked, he said. Okay, so now here's when it's interesting. So he references here 2 entire arcs and running gags about transphobia. This is actually wrong. Now, I am not trans, so I can't speak for any trans people who are upset. But you know who is also not trans? Jello. So let's talk about the trans subplot. Let's see what he says first. Oh, wait, no. I guess not. Wait, here. Perhaps the thing Lovely Complex is most infamous for is its above character, Psycho, who happens to be played by Ozna Dub. Psycho is a male-to-female trans girl who's introduced in a Trans Panic episode. It is not great. The original episode has a random extra out her. There we go. The rest of the cast making fun of Otoni for kissing a boy, and gives Nabuku this extremely weird anti-trans radar that makes her dislike Seiko right off the bat. This is not true. It's not an accurate description anyway. So, Seiko is treated more as a rival, essentially, a fashion rival in the original series. Because she's so well dressed. She is a rival to Risa. That is very different than anything that Jello just talked about. Seiko introductory episode is about Seiko's gender identity, so it's not like we could write it out entirely. Oh, hang on. I think I missed a step here. You couldn't write it. I'd like to give Marissa insane props for doing absolutely everything they could to handle this element of the production respectfully. Let's take a stop there, because this is where the things get complicated. Jello tried to actively rewrite Lovely Complex as an ADR writer. And that is where the controversy starts. It's not where it ends, but it is where it starts. So, let's take a look at a few of the comments real quick. So, I'm not trans, I'm intersex, but I always felt Seiko's story was handled pretty well and respectfully for its time. Like, I remember trans people often praising it, not dissing it. That is also true, and that is one of the things I remember distinctly in 2011, 2012 Tumblr scenes, people talking about this series as a positive case of representation. Obviously, I can't speak about the series particularly because it's been a while since I've read it, so I'm a little hazy on some details, but I do remember it being a really well done plot, that she's treated as one of the cast. She's not treated as an exotic joke. She's treated as a person. Now, has it aged perfectly? I mean, it's about 20 years ago. It's a little less than 20 years ago. I'm not going to pretend it's the best written thing in the world, but hey, they made an effort for its time, and that should be commended, I think. But again, that's my opinion. I'm not by any means the end-all, be-all in anything. So, the Seiko introductory section is about Seiko's agenda. Wow, I cannot speak. I cannot read things today, apparently. That is my gist. Okay, so basically, to summarize it, what he's saying here, he claims we rewrote all of these scenes to be more supportive of Seiko, especially Otani's dialogue, which made it clear he was still kind of disgusted by her. And Asuka's performance of Seiko is so good that I cry every time I watch it now, for good reasons even. From my understanding, didn't need to rewrite too much. So, Jello is coming in here to act like he saved the day, that he stopped those transphobic people. But the reality is, people who have seen both the subbed and original Japanese version and the new dub, which came out in January 30th, I might add, so we have had a few weeks to judge this, the language is not that far apart. There's nothing too drastically different. So, Jello is overplaying his contributions to removing the transphobia from this anime he didn't like, justifying his own position there. He's trying to act like the big hero by localizing the series in the way that altered its original intention, when the reality is there was no change. He didn't do anything. He's taking credit for something that he didn't do. And that's very important to note, because he does that quite a lot. I can summarize a lot of this right now, by the way. So most of this is Jello going into a situation, saying he had to rewrite the anime to fix it. But then people watching the show and saying, actually, you didn't really do anything. You did nothing. You just sort of took credit for what was already written by the original creator that you're insulting, and acted like you came up with it. Or, at the very best, undercutting your friend's success by pointing a big sign on her saying, this person changed the plot for this passionate project she spent 2 years working on. So, despite everything about the original incarnation of the anime, this dub turned out just so funny. We really funneled our frustrations into comedy and wrote a lot of good jokes while also improving as much of the relationships between the leads as possible. There were a lot of scenes where Rissa yells at Otane, and a lot of scenes where Otane reacts to Rissa by inappropriately laughing at her. Many of you probably already know this about me, but I am a romantic and love writing actual good romance TM, because nobody else on Earth seems to know how to do it. Yes, thank you, Jello. You are the master of writing romance. No one has ever written a good romance before, especially not in romance manga. You are the champion at this, Jello. Thank you, our savior. Improving the relationship between the leads and the love com took surgical precision, and I still wouldn't call it a healthy relationship, but I did my absolute best to make sure Rissa and Otane had enough positive characteristics that them falling for each other made some kind of sense. I think we especially improved Otani. He starts off kind of annoying, but by the end of the series, I think I would call him genuinely pretty cute. Risa's unsalvageable, though. Okay. So first off, as we've confirmed, a lot of people have seen the dub. And they've seen the sub. There are a lot of Lovecom fans out there. I'm not a big Lovecom fan, so I can't speak as if this was Evangelion, I could talk about this for hours. But from what I understand, it's not much difference between the dub and the sub. A couple jokes change here and there, of course, but that's the localization process. The jokes are still the same meaning, still the same idea, still the same concept. Jello is taking credit for something that didn't actually happen. He didn't do anything, essentially. He localized these scripts, but he's making it sound like he had to rewrite the whole thing, because he's the only one who knows how to write women and men and in a relationship. I'm going to bring up an issue I have with Jello right now before we continue. Just a little bit of an aside, because I can only take so much of this ego stroking, for so long. So, Jello, a while back, released a video where he summed up all the Ghibli films in 5 words or less. And 2 of the ones he really crapped on pretty hard were When Marnie Was There and Only Yesterday. Especially Only Yesterday. Many people claim that Only Yesterday is actually one of Ghibli's better films. I personally don't agree. I think it's a profoundly beautiful film. I think it's very slow-paced. And I think it's very deliberate. It's one of those things you have to be in the right headspace to enjoy. Obviously, it's Ghibli, so it's incredible. But I have to be in the right headspace to watch it, because if I'm not, I'm just going to be like, I'm not sure I'm feeling it. When Marnie Was There, though, I think is a beautiful movie. Any faults in the first half are completely overshadowed by its second half. When Jello went over these 2 movies in his video, and his supplemental video where he went into more detail with each film, the description he had of them was completely unlike anything else. He would completely make fun of the twist and say how bad it was and how boring it was, and how he would admit it. He would especially dismiss the trauma the characters went through as boring and redundant and useless. But when you watch it out of context, you're like, well, it's a guy's opinion. I don't have to agree with it. It's just someone's opinion online. He doesn't like that kind of stuff. I do. I'm not gonna bash him for it, because I'm the kind of person usually who doesn't go after people for having a different opinion as myself in terms of film and movies. Politics, different story, but film, I'm not going to get angry at you if you dislike a thing I like. Jello is doing that while working on a story that someone else made. Now, if you're any artists in chat, any artists here? So, if you're an artist and you're collaborating with a writer on a comic, your job is to tell the story. Yes, you have to tell, but you also have to collaborate with the other talent. You have to kind of go back and forth, sure, but at the end of the day, you have to create something you're both on the same page about. Ego trips as an artist, when you're working on comics, can go south. This is what happens if the letterist gets an ego trip, essentially. Anyway, so let's keep going. Fun fact, we canonically wrote and directed Risa as a psychopath who doesn't understand empathy, and Otani being in a cycle of abuse without realizing it, because that's the only way her highly inconsistent actions make any kind of sense. At one point, Otani literally tells Risa he, quote, bought a gift for her in preparation for the next time she got mad at him, which is what resolves their current tiff. That's a trauma response. And it's in the sub. Uh-oh, sisters. Frankly, having the dub come out this good in the end is a little frustrating. Anyone who watched the show as a kid and has fond memories of it and visits the dub will think, wow, it's just as good as I remembered. No, it isn't. We made it good. This show sucked. I want to remind you, just in case you've forgotten, that this show was produced as a labor of love by the creators at Soundcaden Studios. Marissa, his friend, worked on this dub for 2 years straight in her life. They made it good. But really, Jello made it good. Because he can't speak for Marissa, but he sure can talk about himself and his opinion. Do you see why this pissed me off so much? Do you get it? This really pissed me off. This whole thing. And we haven't gotten to the most controversial part of it yet. The amount of rough edges we shaved off are entirely invisible, unless you buy the Blu-ray. And play the subtitles on. The dubcast. Now, one thing I will say, the dubcast did an incredible job, despite Jello's ass pain of a response here. Amber and Howard really elevate Risa and Otane. Risa is so unlikable that Amber... Again, he keeps going on about this, you know? But don't forget, he's the only one who knows to write romance well. Yeah, sure you do. I'm going to skip through this. Again, the dubcast, obviously... I will say this, from what I've seen of this dub, the dubcast has done an incredible job. They deserve to be commended for all of this, especially if they had to actually work with this guy. I'm just telling you that right now. If you work through this guy, pat on the back for you. You guys are troopers, all of you. I cannot imagine the ego on this, especially if you're a fan of the show before all this started. No, forget it. Forget it. Anyway, they're talking about that they're very funny. We happened to write Nobuku's breaking point a little earlier than the sub did. This is also demonstrably not true. The sub and the dub are very close, and we'll explain why that is after I finish reading through this whole thing. I'm going to skim through some of it, though, because I want to get to the real important part. Listen, I'm not telling you not... Oh! Yeah, this is where you really get into parts of the territory you can get sued by Discotheque and Sound Cadence. Listen, I'm not telling you not to get the Blu-ray. There's a lot of good bits in this show that aren't in the above compilation. Oh, by the way, in case you forgot or were tuning in late, Jello posted a compilation of clips at the top of this post. I want you to keep that in mind as I read this next part. There's a lot of good bits in this show that aren't in the above compilation. There's also a sizable blooper reel made by Piff that's Blu-ray exclusive. And I'm a snob for blooper reels, and I think it's actually good. Okay. But, now, what's the thing we say? Everything before the but is useless. Everything after the but is what you're really trying to say. Let's keep going. But, hopefully after reading this explanation, you can tell why I'm so, about the franchise, if you know what I mean. Okay. So, already, he's positioning his compilation clip as a substitute for watching the show. Yes, he said, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy the Blu-ray. There's some good things on it, but it's kind of iffy. That right there tells me he wants you to look at the clip of his compilation of clips without following the breadcrumbs and going to the show itself. What that tells you should be this. He doesn't want you to fact check what he's talking about. He doesn't want you to know. Because if he says, don't buy the original source, I know you haven't seen the show in a decade. You're not going to remember the specifics. He's trying to gaslight you. He's trying to say, we made the show better. Don't actually watch the show. Don't actually buy it. Don't support the official release. Because that's going to expose me as a liar. As everyone who actually watched the dub did. After this whole thing came out. Because every single person who watched this original dub, this new dub, came forward and said, hey, Jello, the fuck are you talking about, man? Anyway. Now we get into the part where, and I saw someone mention before that all these live streams I've had, all two of them, have ended with the person I'm criticizing diagnosing mental illnesses to the creator of an anime. The first one was Hideaki Anno being diagnosed with narcissism by a person who didn't understand Evangelion, and now Jello attacks the creator of Lovely Complex. This is one of those series that was written by a very strange person, kind of like 50 Shades of Grey, and it just gets stranger and stranger the longer you look into it. The way all the characters talk and interact is wrong. The way Risa is painted as the good guy makes exclusively bad decisions. Okay, we can make typos here I'm not gonna make fun of him for typos. I do them all the time. Makes everything feel like it's written by a woman with "I hate drama" in her Twitter bio, and then spends five separate call-out tweets right below it. There you go. And then five separate whatever. Who cares? You get the sense that the author sees the world the same way that Risa Koizumi does. And Risa Koizumi is a character only. Risa Koizumi as a character only makes sense if she's a psychopath who does not understand human empathy. Again, with diagnosing the creator here, Jello, you could have stopped, but you keep going. You just had to keep going, didn't you? You couldn't just stop. Of note, the mangaka also makes a cameo in the final episode of the anime, and here we go. She shows up as a fashion designer, and everyone praises how pretty and talented she is, and then tells Risa, "It's my job to make you look good. I think you failed, ma'am." And here we go. Lenti was the head writer on this, and all their decisions were final. But I did tell them, if we didn't cut the characters praising the mangaka out of that episode now dub, I would quit the co-writing position on the spot. Jello wanted to remove an entire chunk of writing because he didn't like the philosophical message of the mangaka being praised in the final episode of the anime. So, let's play this clip.
Work! You did great out there.
Don't let it go to your head. You just had a really good stylist, that's all.
Nakahata's the absolute best in the business, that's for sure.
Stylist. Flatterer. You are so sweet.
I'm not lying. I always love working with you, Nakahata. You're the best.
All right, tone it down.
So, that is the line that Jello would quit over if it wasn't removed. Just saying. Looks like he should have quit, but he didn't. So, let's take a step back here for a second. Jello throws a whole fit about how the creator's a psychopath. Insists that he's gonna quit if they don't cut this line out. Lines in the show. What else did he claim he did? He claimed he rewrote characters so that the climaxes were different. He rewrote character writing. He improved the romance to make it good. But if you have the dubbed version and you have the subs on, you can tell writing's not too far off from what was actually in the original version. Now, he goes on to talk about all these different scenes that he supposedly changed. These are all in the show. They're all there. The things he claims he cut, it's not cut. But don't worry. He doesn't want you buying that Blu-ray, I'm sure for no reason I'm sure for entirely altruistic reasons. Again, he claims he wasn't paid. So, let's recap for a second here. First of all, why would Jello claim these lines were all cut from the script when they clearly aren't? Not only that, but this post was made after the dub was already released. The dub was out there. It's been out there for about 14 days as of this recording. So, why would he lie about this? You can check him. You can fact check him in real time. Why would he lie? Well, I don't know. I have a theory, but we'll get to that in a second. Obviously, this had an immediate response from Discotek and Sound Cadence. So, right here we have Justin Savakis and his response right here. We are made aware of the comments made by a contractor that worked on Lovely Complex. The English version was made with the supervision and approval of the show's original producers. Dubs commonly punch up comedy and smooth over rough patches so that the end product aligns with the show's intended audiences and provokes the intended response, and there will always be shades of gray when adapting a work. Anyone expecting exact fealty to the Japanese dialogue should be watching the subtitles, which Discotek has always presented with as little alteration as is possible when translating from a very different language. We are deeply disappointed at this individual's lack of professional discretion and will not be working with him in the future. We will continue to work on future projects with an eye towards satisfying as many fans as possible. Thank you for your continued support. Sound Cadence's response. We have been made aware of the unofficial and unsanctioned statements made by a contractor in regards to our lovely complex dub project, and we wanted to address the post in question. Firstly, no contractor speaks for the Sound Cadence Studios team. All contractors are assembled and retained on a per-project basis. Secondly, regardless of any one contractor's personal feelings about a project, all productions created at Sound Cadence Studios go through many layers of supervision. In this case, while this individual did help create scripts for Lovely Complex, those scripts then went through a head writer, 2 supervisors, the end client at Discotech, as well as the Japanese licensor, and those scripts were then vetted and approved by all of those parties before they were recorded. In no situation would we allow a product that didn't honor the original work to come to market. We thank the fans who have already supported the release and are delighted by the positive reviews by those who have seen the English language version. Now, what can we conclude based on this so far? Let's go over the facts. JelloApocalypse made a post where he claimed to have changed a lot of different things in the dub. These changes are not present in the finished project, as we've demonstrated. Discotech and Sound Cadence confirm all of the scripts that Jello worked on were then revamped by a head writer, by supervisors, by Discotech, and ultimately by the Japanese licensor. This is the system through which all localization is funneled. All localization goes through this process: writing, company heads, licensor. It is a structure that exists for a reason, to prevent bad actors from changing anything. At the end of the day, Jello accomplished absolutely nothing with his changes. Except for a few jokes, which he compiled into a list, into a video that he compiled personally. These jokes are just localizations because Japanese humor doesn't always translate well. You're not going to get a Japanese pun. I don't care how with it you are. You're just not going to get it unless you speak Japanese. A wordplay pun just won't translate. That's a fair change. That's a fair understanding for the dub. You got to change the pace of language to match the mouth flaps. Again, that's understandable so long as the original intention is retained. Jello went through all these different steps of all the things he changed. And as Sound Cadence Studios just confirmed, every single one of those changes would have been rejected. And probably were rejected. So, what does this mean? What's the next step? What happens now? Well, Jello's post has gone viral. Everyone's seen it. All the right-wing, left-wing, all political factors. And all of them are now pissed off at Jello. But there are certain actors in the anime community who have, for many years, made it their mission to attack localization. Just recently, the whole Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid debacle of 2017, 7 years ago, has come back up in discussion. It's a lightning rod for discussion, this talk about localizations and changes for localizations. Now, KyoAni, as we understand it, signed off on the changes for Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. The licensors for Lovely Complex did not sign off on any changes because the changes were not implemented. However, because Jello claimed that he rewrote the scripts and these were all changed, and that now makes it sound like, to those who haven't seen it, that the changes are in. That this is how it's presented. Now, further, Jello also implemented all of his friends, including Marissa's last name. Marissa's last name is Marissa Lenti. So, Marissa Lenti was the head writer of this show. Everything Jello changed, she approved or disapproved. Now, from there, everything that Marissa went up the chain to the licensor. As much as Jello likes to claim that he isn't speaking for Marissa, He did. A lot. And Marissa hasn't really had a chance to say in this situation to speak for herself. Marissa Lenti is basically being dragged through the mud by her friend. And on a professional level, too, is compromised in the eye of a very critical public. Jello is not a localizer. He's not a script. He wrote one script for one show, and as you can see, most of his contributions were rejected immediately outright. So he's not going to deal with the fallout of any of this. He's going to go off and do his own thing. Yes, we're saying he nuked his career, but he's nuked from the anime industry. Discotheque will not work with him again. And with his unprofessional behavior, if he can't work at Discotheque, he's not working anywhere. Because Discotheque is one of the last independent anime localization companies, and distributors in America. Everything else is owned by Sony or Viz. So big, or the big companies, Netflix, these are the big dogs. If Discotheque won't work with him, it's not really likely he's going to be working as an ADR writer for the more professional outlets. If he has this unprofessional outlook on his behavior, if he's just compromising to his crew, why would they take a look? Why would they risk with him? Why would they risk hiring him? He's going to tell everyone about their inner workings. He doesn't want that. But who is going to suffer as a result of this? Discotheque, Cadence, Marissa. They're going to suffer from this because now Jello put a big target on their backs for localization, for changing things. On Twitter, I saw so many people start immediately saying, this is proof that we've been right for years. We've been telling you for decades this was the case, that these localizers were doing this. And now that basically Jello has become the manifestation of everything they've hated, they feel justified. This is despite the fact that Jello kind of confirmed everything we've been saying this whole time. That bad actors in this field, there is so much oversight, such a system in place, that their actions have a minimal impact on anything. Jello has proved the system works by being a colossal idiot on the internet. By being making a fool of himself with his post. He has proven that the localization system works. And no one is going to care. No one will care. Because what sells is not the reality. The reality is this. JelloApocalypse, Brendan, tried to fudge a script for an anime. Very few of his changes outside of his jokes made it all the way in. Because the system that was in place to protect the license holders and the original intellectual property worked. But with this post, he's made it so that the people working on this, who worked on it for years, who are passionate, who are eager, who are determined to make it the best thing they could do, now have a target on their backs. And all of them are now in the limelights of people who are here to exploit and take advantage of the situation for personal profit. And Jello, because he's not in this industry and only dabbled in it for a year as a side project, is going to see no repercussions from this. We already saw this happen with Ruby. He broke NDA for them and saw no repercussions as a result. We saw it before a couple years earlier. He made that political video that got everyone angry. No one cared. He has constantly made a career of saying, other shows are terrible. I know why they're terrible. Here's why they're terrible. But in reality, he's just saying his opinion. And even then, usually a very twisted perspective of it. Because what he's saying is not reflective of the reality of the thing he's talking about. It is the worst kind of arrogance to say that you know better than a writer whose job is to make the writer's words work in another language. You are there to When necessary, adapt. When possible, relay, communicate. Someone else's voice, someone else's ideas. Now, there is always room for creativity in localization, because some jokes just don't translate well. You have to relay the original intention, but in a way that communicates well to the audience here. This is everything that people have claimed localization to be. And the fact that none of it worked is proof that they were always wrong. But that's not as interesting or as marketable as saying we were right the whole time in secret, even though the full story reveals they were wrong the whole time. And now people are going to be having a target on their backs. I think I've talked long enough. I think I've responded to some comments here. All right, let's see some of these comments here. Just happened yesterday. Lots of cross-dressing manga. Yeah, a lot of cross-dressing manga out there. Tons of cross-dressing manga. The worst, someone who works in localization are not mad about Jello. They're mad because people dared to have doubts in Discotek. Yeah, that's a big thing. Discotek is a major company in this landscape. They are one of the few who are really there to... a lot of company... Back in the day when I was younger, anime dubbing studios were less frequent. They were less common. And as a result, a lot of them were independent. They've since been bought out, a lot of them. What was once ADV is now, Section 23, or... They're owned by AMC now, what was once ADV. Funimation is now merged fully with Crunchyroll. Viz, Pioneer, all those guys. 4Kids is gone. Central Park Media is gone. Discotek's one of the last ones. Media Blasters was another one. Genion, remember Genion, guys? Yeah, they're gone. But, so Discotek being attacked this way, they're much smaller. They aren't... If their bottom line is threatened, they are actually threatened, and they do a lot of good for this community. If you look at Discotek's regular releases, they do a lot of great physical releases for this medium. They release things that are out of print, that are underrepresented, that are old favorites. They are necessary for the media preservation landscape in the West for anime. No, Jello is not an abuser, as far as I know. His hate is that as far as I know, he hasn't abused anyone. I don't want to make that mistake. Unless something comes up that I don't know about, I have never heard of Jello physically attacking someone. This is all about him painting a target on the backs of his coworkers and friends, out of ego, to elevate himself, to be the big hero who fixed this bad anime. Because apparently he thinks that anime localization follows the same rules as his. So this is basically videos. Is there a reason he can't work at Crunchyroll? Well, yes, there is a reason why Jello probably will never work at Crunchyroll as an ADR writer. As a voice actor, different story. But as a writer, he's too unprofessional. That's why. This is not something you do if you want to work in an industry. This is what you do when you want to leave the industry, when you want to burn every bridge at once. He has just insulted the intelligence of those who run both Discotek and Sound Cadence, because there's a passion of love. There's a project of love. They love this series, and he just insulted it to their face. That's one thing. For another, he indicated that it's just that easy just to change all of the scripts without any oversight. And that's another thing he did that was bad. And he threw under the bus a fellow ADR writer, all while saying how bad the anime is and how good his rewrite is. The level of ego on that means that no actual studio that regularly produces content that is consumed by a large audience, that has to be completed in a short period of time, would want to work with him. Because again, with Crunchyroll, it's simultaneous releases. You better work fast, and you better work accurately. The less they have to communicate changes to the higher-ups in Japan, the better. Speed is the name of the game. So why would you want to hire someone who changes things all the time? That just means more paperwork, more back and forth. You want someone who's faithful to the script, who won't have to have as many changes discussed in meetings with Japanese local, representatives. Yeah, it is ironic, isn't it? All this, it's sad. It's a very sad point. So, remember the time Jello made a Twitter post criticizing Encanto and Turning Red for how they handled family. Yeah. Used to promote his epithet theory. Yeah. So, that's another controversy. Let me see if I can get this one up for you guys. JelloApocalypse Encanto. Let me see if I can find the image here. Here we go. Excellent. Right here. So, let me see if you guys can see that. Yeah, so this image right here. Open in new tab. Ah, perfect. Excellent right here. So, this might be an unpopular take, but I'm kind of tired of animated films exploring generational trauma when the only ending that they're willing to have is the trauma was resolved because it's the end of the movie now, and that's when things are resolved. Post 1 of 8. Now, listen, I'm not the biggest shill for Disney here, but Encanto is not. That's not how Encanto ends. It's not how Turning Red ends. It's not how Coco ends. That might be how Chicken Little ends. I don't care about Chicken Little. I think it's one of the worst pieces of crap I've ever seen that come out of Disney. But that's not a description of these movies. That's a gross misrepresentation of the endings of these films. Now look, generational trauma. Oh yeah. Oh, I see you, Callie. What's going on? I just saw you there. Turning Red's a fantastic movie and the trauma wasn't resolved. No, the trauma is not resolved in Turning Red. That's absolutely correct. The trauma in Turning Red is ultimately lingering by the end of the film. Because there's no easy solution. There's always there's always a sense of disconnect. And things are changed and broken in ways that can never really be fixed, but you can move on from them. The problem is Brandon here misrepresents the things he doesn't like. Now, I think everyone does it to an extent. We tend to misrepresent things we don't like if we really hate them and want to be hyperbolic. But the problem is he does this constantly about everything he doesn't like. Again, consider the story when Monty was there. He talks about this girl with depression, genuine depression with typical depressive signs, and makes it into like a dismissive, oh, stop crying about your problems. Your problems are so small, who cares about that? Well, the girl's depression. What are you going to do? In Encanto especially too, there's still a lot of generational trauma, and they only overcome it because it tears their house, both figuratively and literally, apart, and they have to rebuild from there. It's this oversimplification of media that really indicates that Brandon doesn't really know what he's talking about, and he thinks he's a lot smarter than he really is. And that's why he's not really... ADR writing is not the industry for him. Epithet erased, sure, you can do that. You can do your own independent projects where you have complete creative control. Go for it. I will never say no to that. Go for it. But adapting someone else's work? Interpreting someone else's work? Everybody said that was like the minority for liking Trolls 2. People love Trolls 2. I don't really care about Trolls 2 all that much, but people love Trolls 2. The whole government named Brandon like at this point. Use the whole government named Brandon like at this point apparent. Yeah, that sums up Brandon. Like, that's the problem. He and that's a big issue I have with a lot of media criticism where they... Okay, so let me tell you a story about my studies. When I was studying in my master's programs, they discussed literary review in terms of book review, in case you want to go into book review, what have you. And one of the things they discussed was intentionality with the text. They told us, do not review a story or a book or a film or anything like that as though it is good or it is bad. They're good and bad, you cannot use those words. They are objectively inaccurate ways to describe stories. You must review it like this, and this is a lesson that has always stuck with me. What is the author trying to convey? how does the author successfully convey that material? How do they unsuccessfully convey that material? All the elements have to be there. You have to consider what they do, what they're trying to do, and how successfully they do it. In the case of Turning Red, they're trying to relay generational trauma. How do they succeed? Well, they show different elements of it. They show the relationship between mother and daughter. Maybe a little cartoonish, sure, but they still show that dichotomy. It ends with a big kaiju fight, but then becomes like more of an intimate, personal moment of reflection where you see that the pain that the daughter goes through is the same thing as pain the mother's going through. And you see the generational conveyance of that trauma. The neuroses pass from generation to generation. And the only way to really grow past that is to acknowledge the faults of both parties in a way where you get to grow as a person. Author intent is very important. Now, Brandon is saying here, the message is that there's trauma, and the trauma ends at the end because the movie ends, and the movie ends because we ran out of running time. Reese is a psychopath. We had to fix her to make sure she's good, because I'm the only one who knows how to write romance correctly. Disappointed. It's sad. It really is, because all of this is unnecessary. Not a single thing he did needed to be done. I'm not talking about the changes and him being rejected with his changes, because obviously his changes were rejected. I'm sure there was a big blow to his ego there. But none of this whole drama needed to occur. He just couldn't shut up. He couldn't shut up for 5 seconds. He couldn't nurse his bruised ego. He couldn't cry on Discord to his friends. He couldn't go to a private chat. He couldn't go to a bar with some buddies and say, "Ah, man, that's just really annoyed me." He didn't know when to shut up. That is the key element of being a professional. Knowing when to shut up and stop talking. And that is what you can get in trouble with legally at this point. Because all of this, I guarantee, breaks his NDA with Discotheque and Sound Cadence. That is a serious crime. Not crime, I'm sorry. It is a lawsuit. And he can get sued from this. I guarantee it. Will he get sued? I don't know. But he could be sued. Probably not for a lot. It probably won't cost him that much money. But here is the ADR writer of your show actively campaigning against the physical release of media that you put out. That was a labor of love. That he is now brandishing with libel. Because after all, slander is spoken in print, it's libel. The only reason he talked was to be a hero on the internet. To be the champion who's standing up for all the minorities that he clearly is now throwing under the bus and putting a target on. Because I guarantee that the reactionaries are going to love bullying trans people, because half of Brandon's whole message is about how he saved a trans character who didn't need saving in his script. Well, Brandon wanted to be a hero, and by doing so, he has now put a lot of people in the crosshairs of reactionaries. Alright, let me take a look at some of these comments. Oh, Jazzy's on here. Awesome. Speaking as a voice actor, I couldn't even fathom the idea of publicly slamming someone the way he did. Yeah. Like, legit, if I talked shit on a product I voice in days before release, I wouldn't have a voice role anymore. Yeah. 100% agree. And that's the other thing, too. Yes, you're right. I'm sure given his audience size of over 1 million, the court would likely award damages to Discotheque. Yeah, Brandon has a larger audience than Discotheque. He has over 1.6 million subs on YouTube. And I don't know how many Patreons he has currently, but that's a huge audience. And he posted this for free, so anyone outside of his circle could read it. That is massive. This is unfathomable amount of damage to a company that this could do. And he didn't care. He just did it. He posted. Yeah, it's deleted now. I'm looking at an archive of it, but that's not to say that the internet's forever. When you post something on the internet, it's there. So, I can't imagine how this guy this guy thought this would go over well. Well, you see, Starlight, when you have a massive ego, everything sounds like a great idea. When you have no one there to tell you, hey, buddy, shut up, you don't shut up. That's what it comes down to. You need someone there to say, hey, buddy, cool your jets a little bit. 4.4 thousand Patreon subs. Already, yeah. So, let's be fair. When I say JelloApocalypse is probably blacklisted from the anime industry right now, that's not going to affect his bottom line all that much. Like, let's be fair. He nuked his career, but this isn't like an Illuminati situation. He's going to be probably fine. Most people in this chat don't even know what we're talking about in terms of, like, the story before we described it. This is not a story that's really gotten out that far. Not to say the people in chat don't know what they're talking about. Now, of course you do if you didn't know before. But I'm saying that a lot of you guys are asking, what did Jello do? What did Jello do? It's a valid question. How would you know something you didn't know about before? How would I don't think even 100th of his subscribers on YouTube have heard about this drama. There's this controversy. I would be shocked if even 100,000 of them know. And again, listen, there's a discussion also online where we discussed, should you have to enjoy what you do to do it? You know, should Jello have to love this project? Should he be in love with this project? No. Who cares if you love it? No one cares if you love the thing you're working on. What matters is the end result. Now, you personally should have satisfaction in your work because you did a good job or you did hard work, whatever. But I personally don't care if you enjoy writing this script. What I care about as an audience member, as a person here, is the final result and if it is a work worth defending. Hey, listen, I want you to enjoy the art you do. But at the end of the day, what matters ultimately is that you're healthy, that you're not overworked, that you're not exploited for your work, and that the work you produce is good. If you're going to volunteer for free for something, you should enjoy it. That's something that you're doing on your own volition for free. And obviously he can afford to do it. He has like 1.6 million subs. He has 4.4 thousand Patreon subs. He can afford to do a creative endeavor for free, financially. So I'm not feeling bad for him there. He's got the money, clearly. A lot of, and again, a lot of people here right there, it's like, it sucks to see a big YouTuber like him acting like this. This is so immature. This is really childish behavior. This is a look at me, I'm so special kind of nonsense. It's asinine, completely asinine and arrogant. And the fact that he is such a big deal on this platform and has just painted a target on people who are much smaller than him, I have no respect for this person whatsoever. My respect doesn't matter all that much. I'm not a big deal in the long scheme of things either. But this is still very, what's it say right here? I don't know about that. Most of his streams implied the epithet erase cost a lot more than they had raised. Yeah, probably. Wouldn't surprise me. Because how is he profiting from it? He's profiting up from YouTube ad revenue, right? That's not easy to do. Yeah, but by enjoying the product you work with, it will make the said product better quality. Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. There are some projects that were produced from pure misery and human suffering, and people hated it, but they still turned out great. If you didn't know The Shining, I'm not going to tell that story again. Everyone knows the story about The Shining production, how it was a miserable hellscape for Shelley Duvall. But joy had nothing to do with that product, but the product was still fantastic. Does that excuse the behavior on set? No, by no means. It was a hellscape of a set to work on. But happiness behind the scenes does not always translate to quality in front of the screen. What really gets me is how this dub was purely a passion project with someone who really liked the anime, and he just publicly shat all over it. Yeah, 100% that too. And that's when I mentioned that before too, but this was a passion project. Lovely Complex was, by design, nothing that anyone wanted to dub unless you were passionate about it. And Amberly Connors, Sound Cadence's CEO, really, really loved Lovecom. And so the people who hired you love this project. And you spend an entire post bad-mouthing it and telling them not to buy the DVD. So all that unpaid labor that you know they were desperate to produce, you're just undercutting it. And that right there pisses me off. Because people clearly did love working on this. Again, I've spoken to individuals who worked on this production, and all of them said that they loved working on this project. This was a passion project for them. And here this guy comes in, with no skin in the game, to say this. I think I've said enough as is. This is not going to be a 4-hour stream. I think I'm going to cut it off now, because I think I've said enough. But, that being said, I do want to do a couple housekeeping things. If you haven't watched my most... Actually, maybe a few comments first. Maze Point on Twitter. Sometimes a job's a job. Don't have to enjoy it, but you have to respect it. You can't do that, leave. Yes. 100% that. I agree with that. Do you think there will be some good out of this with people checking out the anime? In a perfect world, yes. In a perfect world, people will watch Lovely Complex, and it'll be a big... There's the whole phrase, no publicity is bad publicity, and people will watch it. In a perfect world. I don't know how many will watch it, though, because of that. Because of the bad word of mouth from Jello himself. I'm hoping that all of this becomes a boost for it. A quality boost, people start watching it. But optimistically, people watch this. People buy the Blu-ray. I'm going to buy the Blu-ray. I'm going to buy it after this. I'm going to buy the Blu-ray for this because I feel like I'm curious to see it. I read the manga read some of the manga 10 years ago. I think I can watch this. I think I'll enjoy it. I'm going to try buying this dub and seeing what comes of it. Because if you don't support these official releases, they're gone. Media preservation is such a small industry. You need to preserve this media. Otherwise, it's lost. What else we got here? Best case scenario is that Blacklist Jello will see this as a wake-up call and get his act together. Yeah, sure. I have no faith in that. Honestly, I don't think he thinks he's wrong. I think he thinks he's totally right. I think he's justified. If him deleting all this is probably just him trying to cover his butt, but I think he's right. I think he thinks he's right. Won't be affected as much other performing. Yeah, many dubs will be affected by this negatively, I think. The whole localization industry is under heavy criticism by this Gamergate subculture, and I think this is just going to be a lightning rod to them. Surprised people didn't bring up Kobayashi's dub when this happened as an example of things could have ended if people weren't double checking. Well, people were double checking for Kobayashi, so that's one thing. Kobayashi was approved by Kiyoani, so that's one thing. They were checking that one, but for two, they didn't mention Kobayashi because I think they're bored talking about it, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. How much have they've been talking about it nonstop for a month. And before that, years before that. Don't you get bored and tired? I can't talk about the same thing for a week before I get tired of it. I can't imagine weeks and weeks and weeks of rage content. I'd be burned out on that crap. Yeah, so a couple housekeeping things before we... this is basic. Well, Gamergate 2.0 would be very odd to say, considering we've had 3 or 4 other Gamergate movements already. We already had the Sad Puppies with the Hugo Awards. We had Comicsgate. We had the Fandom Menace. We've had the anime, whatever it is, with the Mignogna trial. Yeah, this is another thing. Anyway, so a couple housekeeping things before I close this stream up for tonight. If you haven't watched my video on localization, please do. I think it will shed a lot of light on my perspectives in a more articulate way than me rambling drunkenly to the camera, drinking half a whiskey drink. Oh, it's actually almost on This Friday, I will be releasing a video, if the copyright doesn't block it, of course, about the Netflix Avatar: The Last Airbender series and some of the changes that Netflix is making and why I think that's concerning for a number of reasons. It's a shorter video, but it's still a video. And then the week after next will be a video that has nothing to do with anime whatsoever, but will instead be about one of my all-time favorite science fiction novels ever. If you know me, you know what I'm referring to. If you don't, I'll leave it up to you to figure out. Anyway, so, with that being said, I'm going to end this stream now with a thanks for everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for please, if you like this, follow and subscribe for more. I would love to see you guys back again in a future stream. I'm going to try making a regular thing out of streams in the future, but again, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a joy to do, and I hope we can have conversations about more uplifting things in the future. So, thanks again.